We need to blow up our schools and our education system and start from scratch with a first principles approach to learning. I was planning on making a video on artificial intelligence revolutionizing learning through individually tailored feedback loops, but I fell into the quagmire that is our education system. I couldn't adequately explain how to apply that artificial intelligence without first talking about how our education system should be, so I have to film two videos here. This video will focus on a first principles thinking approach towards what our education system should be. The second video will be on individual tailoring with artificial intelligence learning to that person. So let's get into it. To set the stage, we need an extremely brief history of learning. During the hunter-gatherer days, children and young adults learned by exploring and what we'd call on-the-job training. There was inevitably some learning through storytelling, but the vast majority of learning occurred at the pace of the individual's discovery and according to their will, pacing, and desires. Arguably, this method of learning from experience, maximizing reward, while minimizing suffering that evolution has instilled on us through natural selection as humans. Learning shifted with the advent of agriculture, the Industrial Revolution, so on.
Compulsive schooling was something that was created 120 years ago and for a very different purpose and a very different time. So back then, it was important to train kids to become assembly line workers for, it was the Industrial Revolution, so they had to work at factories. We also had to train kids to be in the military. So kids had to learn a specific set of things and they had to learn how to follow instructions for the jobs that they were going to have back then. So it worked back then. The problem is that the years started to pass and pass. All the other industries started changing, as expected, except for education. So, if you look at a picture of a classroom and the way things were done 120 years ago, and you look at a picture now, you're going to see basically the same thing. In school, we're still training them to be assembly line workers, to operate under instructions. The whole nature of a school right now just goes against everything we know about how kids learn, right? So if you think about school, you can't really talk. Teachers tell you all the time, like, you're not here to socialize, you're here to learn. So, the instinct of a kid is to talk. So they go to school, they can't talk. In school, they have to be listening to a teacher and listening to a lecture. Like, that's not how kids learn. Kids need to be active and creating things and making mistakes and trying things out. So all these things go against the nature of a kid and against how kids learn. Yet we continue to do it just because the system hasn't changed in so many years.
All right, history session complete. Now, for a first principles thinking approach to learning. For those unaware, first principles start directly with science, the building blocks. They start with the laws of physics and human behavior, for instance. Most importantly, first principles don't start with what we call the norm. Frankly, first principle thinkers do things how they should be done, not adapting to the way things are. It's revolutionary, not evolutionary.
You kind of boil things down to the most fundamental truths and say, okay, what are we sure is true or as sure as possible is true? And then reason up from there. That takes a lot more mental energy.
Well, here are 10 principles needed in the way we educate in order for people to learn in the future. Number 1, help people learn throughout their lives, not just in the regimented K through 12 curricula. This stoic curriculum pursuit does not provide people what they need throughout their lives. It is important that we prepare our children for the future, but learning should continue as young adults, or even as adults. We are starting to see this more and more now. It's becoming acceptable to bounce between jobs, picking up experience and learning along the way, rather than working at the same company for 40 years. Number 2, tailor the learning to the student. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Don't hold every student to the same rigid milestone regardless of their speed of learning and gas factor. It is a fact that no student is average by definition. If you have a cookie-cutter approach to education, you will over and undershoot 100% of your learners. No two people learn the same at the same rate in every topic. Help the students learn at their pace for each topic. The AI discussed in the next video will harp on this pretty huge. And here's a novel idea. Let people validate material. Oh, hey Susie, I heard you like to program apps in your free time. Let's push you through the beginning comp sci class and instead teach you how to program AI or this new hotness that you're probably interested in. Number 3, instead of semesters with rigid courseware that we talked about and set topics, semesters should be conducted more like sprints in software development. Students learn at their ideal pace for a set amount of time. It is time and effort based, not material focused. The learning is as quick or as slow as required by the reader for that specific topic. Your only grade need be your effort. Man, that makes sense, doesn't it? Thanks, that's called first principles thinking. Number 4, we need to make learning fun instead of dreaded. Gamify learning. Game companies have learned this, obviously. Give awards and badges and money and other rewards to students to incentivize behavior and learning. As one example, I recently did a cloud computing class and Hadoop with IBM so I could see what it was all about and get their cool badge, which is literally worthless, but that didn't stop me from wanting to get that one. Number 5, this awarding of milestones and achievements leads directly into certifications or other objective displays of learning or capabilities. Why do we mandate college degrees in many professions when most of what the individual learned in college has absolutely no applicability to the work? It's a box check. We should seek skills and qualities. Don't get me wrong, colleges do a great job in some ways of teaching students how to think, not necessarily what to think. That aspect of college is the most valuable for many. We should be able to show others what we have learned and are proficient at along with our skills. Number 6, the teacher model is fundamentally flawed. The model should not revolve around the teacher-student relationship in the first place. It should be about the learner and perhaps a guide.
You cannot enforce learning. It doesn't matter how hard you try, you cannot force somebody to learn. What you can do, and not a lot of people take this approach, but I did and it worked, is you can inspire kids to want to learn.
I would wager the vast majority of each student-teacher relationship results in shoving material down the student's noggin rather than learning through foundational discovery. And this is almost required in public schools. Number 7, grades do not matter. Only the learning does. Grades are only required because of the time constraints we place on semesters and course durations. The focus should be on achieving a standard, and the only grade should be the learner's effort. I don't want to spoil how this can be measured. I'll discuss that in my next video. And yes, it is a little bit more difficult than a Scantron test. We can monitor the learner, creating feedback, individually tailoring that learning to that person. If the student is learning, that is all we care about. Let's reward his or her effort. I've hinted at it so far, but learning is a discovery and exploration process. Preferred modes of learning are frequently the opposite of what's executed today. Learning should not occur with one teacher talking at students in a stuffy classroom without any other modes or methods of stimulation. We're just now seeing some of that in 2020, but some learning can occur at home, in a park, in a work setting, playing sports. The world's our classroom. I know many teachers who love this, but the rigid requirements and timing of the students, the required material, just prohibit them from learning as our brains have evolved to learn. Unfortunately, there seem to be more impediments placed on this by cities, counties, states, and federal mandates, legislation, and restrictions. Think about first principles here. Number 9, the penultimate effort should be in giving the learner time off to discover what they find fascinating, what they have a passion for, and where they want to go. I wouldn't go so far as mandatory sabbaticals, but there is much learning to be done in the real world, and it gives the learner ample time to digest and, more importantly, frame the material they have just consumed. We all know that we learn better from doing, period. Number 10, the first 9 revolutionary ideas here have applied to how we can facilitate learning, Now, this last one, let's look at the learner itself. Picture a young child asking why all the time and never taking because I said so as gospel. This is the spirit of first principles learning and application. Think about Elon Musk's efforts with SpaceX and Tesla and Solar City, challenging norms and pursuits that make science sense from the ground up. We must clarify the origins of our ideas. We often learn through watching others, an analogy, the opposite of first principles. It is important that you know why you arrived at a conclusion. Challenge your assumptions. You can't challenge every assumption, you don't have the time for that, but it's important not to hold steadfast on any one belief and realize when assumptions are being made and be ready to change them. Look for and use evidence and logic trains. If this is true, then this is true. Then this should be what happens. Think about a world in which we dive headfirst into these principles of learning, and instead of layering on more regulation, regimentation, and duct tape on our education system, that we've arrived at how people should be learning. I can discuss artificial intelligence and how it can help us. AI can create some very powerful tailored delivery and feedback loops for individualized learning. That's the goal. Think along those lines of having your own private leading guide. If that sounds good, hit the thumbs up, smash subscribe, because next video we'll go there. We'll talk about just that with some examples of the real world application today that are mind-blowing. I can't wait. The future is bright. This is Jerry. See ya.